Welcome to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. Due to technical difficulties last week, the show recorded with me, Klucas, and Martha Lane Collins, lacrosse coach Caleb Elliott, was not recorded in my computer. I apologize for the inconvenience. However, we got a jam-packed show today. We have this episode right here where I'm joined by, as always, my trusted sidekick, Jacob Klucas, and new author, Shon Diaz. Shon, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, bro.
Anytime, my man. Klucas, how you doing?
Like I said before, it's the earliest we've done a show, but we got a jam-packed day, so I'm ready to go. I'm always ready.
I like it. I respect it. So first thing we're going to get started is my friend Shon just came out with a new book called Plight, a story for the new generation. So my first question is, what inspired you to write this?
Honestly, feeling like I had nothing left to give. Like, I was kind of at a low point. So it was basically a challenge to myself to see if I could really get back to with writing, which is something I love to do, make stories, sketches, stuff like that. And I just decided to apply myself, try to take it seriously, make a career out of it.
So for those who are not aware, the book Plight follows the story of a 16-year-old basketball. Wow, how's my computer acting up? Okay, sorry. Of Edwin Kingston, a 6'2" point guard from Central High School in Louisville, Kentucky. It may be a fictional story about fictional characters, but it deals with a lot of real-life issues. So, Shon, again, kind of talk about some of the issues that Edwin has to go through throughout the book.
Sure. For sure.
No, like how kind of like light, I guess, go down, kind of break down a little bit some of the things that he's got to go through without giving away too much of the book.
Without giving away too much of the book, basically, I can just sum it up as a perspective of life through, African American eyes. You know what I'm saying? African American perspective of life, like in this day and age. There's just so much that the younger generation seeing. But what Edwin has to go through personally is, let's see, his father's in jail, prison. His mother left him, and that's just starting out. And just having to be a basketball star in the public eye, and having to deal with real life situations, it makes for a good read, I think.
And obviously, some of these issues are the everyday life of a lot of individuals across the country, and a lot of basketball basketball prodigies. Are going through a lot of the similar situation. But also, given today's current events, how much, I guess, is the timing of this book work with the current events of today's society?
It's spot on. I feel like, a lot of people can relate to this book because they live it, or can find similarities like, yeah, that relates to me, or I've been through that, or I know somebody that's going through that. And then hopefully one of the main goals is I reach a reader who, is looking for, so let's say a white American or somebody, a different nationality that wants to support like Black Lives Matter and that's down with the movement. Hopefully it gives them a perspective on kind of the things that not all of us deal with, because not all of, Black America deals with the, one parent household, the struggle and all that, but mostly do. And I'm just trying to give people a perspective that they normally wouldn't think about, and just inspire change too. Like in the book, one of the things I call for is like just a change, change, social reform, a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Reading a little bit about Kingston, I'm taking my time reading the book because I'm really trying to digest everything it's saying. But when I read this book, it reminds me very similarly about real life players and some of the things that are going on behind the scenes too, and things that the average fan isn't aware of and that they have to go through. For example, the whole situation that why James Wiseman couldn't finish his freshman season at Memphis, the whole deal with Penny Hardaway. And of course, your average fan that doesn't know some of the struggles of what Wiseman had to deal with off the court, or like, oh, well, he took the money, or, he took the loan from, Coach Penny Hardaway, and yeah, he deserves to get suspended. It's like, it's one of those things. You're not wrong, but you're also not looking at it from his shoes as well. So I think, one thing I have noticed about your book so far is it really does actually shed light on what it's like to walk into that other person's shoes. So I think you did a fantastic job, and I think it's going to be very eye-opening for anyone who decides to read it.
I appreciate that. And back to your point on, because when they did broadcast that Wiseman story, all they did broadcast was like, oh, he took the money. And this goes back to situations prior, similar situation prior to his, they never report why. You know what I'm saying? There's always a why to every story or every headline. There's a why to it. It just never gets reported. Man, Wiseman could have had his mom lost a job. There's numerous things that could have happened for him to take that money. And I'm pretty sure, he's old enough to have seen other players get in trouble for that. So I'll guarantee you there's a good reason, a real life reason to take some money. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And I think Wiseman's family was financially struggling at the time, and they really needed the help. And Penny Hardaway being his coach, an AAU mentor, like he was just trying to help the kid out, and I can't fault him for that. The heart's in the right place. So what? You got to pull some strings. Me personally, that's sometimes pulling a couple strings. If it means giving a talented individual the tools that they need to succeed, I don't have an issue with it. And that example doesn't just go out for Wiseman. I mean, Klucas, I'll get you involved. I mean, it was a very similar situation with Chase Young.
Yep. So almost same exact situation with Chase Young.
And the one thing, not to compare situations, but what really angered me about the Chase Young situation is that his family paid the money back and still had to be suspended, even if it was only for one game.
Yep. That was
protocol
what,
and still was punished.
That was what peed me off about it too. It's the fact that yes, he took the money, and I get it. It's against NCAA policy to take the money, but the money was paid back, before he had even, stepped foot into college, and he still got in trouble for it. So,
yeah, I think what's going on in these days and times, like the NCAA, they're gonna have to make changes too, as well. Like their policies. I find it funny, that it's a $1 billion nonprofit organization. You know what I mean? Like that kind of doesn't make sense to me.
They're supposed. The NCAA and college athletics and the college scene in general is supposed to benefit, but who's really benefiting? It's the corporation. They're making millions and millions of dollars. You can't convince me that these players their name value isn't worth something. I wear this example out, but it's so true. Anytime you have a player that blows through a sneaker and cost a company $1 billion overnight, you don't think that his name carries weight? Come on now. And I know Klucas has heard me use that example a million times.
Yeah,
but
that's the thing. Especially when you're bringing in guys like a Zion Williamson, or even go back to like when UK was marketing Bow to the Brow with Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's $1 million worth of marketing that these players aren't seeing at all.
I'll say, and you'll have
that's a discussion for another podcast in terms of players being paid and all that. But because I don't want to go, if I go deep into that, this will be a 3-hour running show. But it's all these colleges, like you said, everybody's making their money off of these players, and these players aren't seeing that, and it's wrong.
And it's funny because you always hear the counter argument that they're receiving stipends, and yes, the stipends are a pretty nice skill, but in the grand scheme of
college tuition.
They are getting paid through the stipends too. They're not just getting free college tuition, but in the scheme of things, with how much money that their name revenue is generating compared to what they are bringing in through the stipend, it's very minuscule.
Just Yeah, it's just a percentage. That's it.
Right.
To quote Richard Sherman, when we talk about, everybody says, well, they get a free college tuition, that should be enough for them, yada, yada, yada. We don't get that, all this and that. Just like Richard Sherman said a long time ago, my scholarship isn't for school, it's for football.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, yes, am I here to get an education and all that? Yes. But at the end of the day, these coaches will tell you straight up your scholarship is for football or for whatever respective sport.
I'm really surprised you didn't bring up another example, and that's what Cardell Jones said a while back. That tweet that went viral.
Why are we in class anyway? I don't need this.
I wasn't even talking about that tweet. That was another tweet. The one tweet says we don't play school, we play football.
Yeah, that was the one.
But no, whether it's Edwin Kingston or James Wiseman or Chase Young, I think what I like, again, I can't stress enough, what I really like about your book Plight so far is that it really takes an in-depth look of what a lot of these players are going through. It gives perspective of what's going on socially. And I think that people need to read this and actually hear the other side. I mean, I had a conversation with my mom yesterday, and sometimes it's not always agreeing which is the right answer, but trying to understand the other side, or at least respect the other side.
It's basically a human decency thing. Like, you wake up in the morning, and somebody said this the other day. You like your job, but you don't like the people you work with. But in order to get through your job, you establish human decency. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Mutual level of respect to help get you through your day or your life, for that moment in time. And when you have, bring it to a more broader social aspect, it's the same human decency. Not every white person's a racist. Not every black guy's dumb. Not every Latino person eats beans, if I can say that. I'm just making, stereotypes, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Not everybody fits that stereotype. And I just think if we start moving as a nation, as a people, with just borderline human decency and trying to have understanding with one another, we'd be in a better spot, a better situation.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's like you said, it's about human decency and respect. There are plenty of times, like you said, you may or may not like the people you work with, but you have to, either tolerate them or respect them to get a job done. There are many times I want to knock my co-host Spencer out when I'm at FedEx, but I can't do that. I'd get fired. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm sure if Klucas worked at the same FedEx hub as we do, he'd want to knock us out. He'd want to knock both of us out by the end of the day. Probably.
Especially Spencer.
Spencer for sure. He's a pain in my ass. We love him anyway, but he is a pain in the ass. But no, for any of those those watching this right now, definitely go up. It's what all is it available on? How can the consumer purchase?
If you want to help support, me and what I plan on doing, with my writing, which is honestly, my main goal is to inspire or motivate as many people as I can to pursue their craft, because I say, their craft, their talent, or their gift. A lot of people feel like they're not born with a talent or a gift, but most functioning humans will have the potential to master a craft. Something that you can do for yourself that you enjoy doing and you can be productive with. You can make money for yourself with it. But yeah, that's my main goal, is for people to find their craft, talent, or gift and use it to benefit themselves, help them grow, and find happiness with it. So if you want to support me, I advise going to arthouse.com. And that's just like, to be honest with you, I get a more percentage of royalty things, but what I plan on doing is giving back to the Louisville 502-812 community in some type of way, man. We just been through this year with the coronavirus, the Black Lives Matter movement, justice for Breonna Taylor, by the way. We still need that. This area seems so much, and I just like to do something to give back and show that, there's still good people out here. You can still thrive in this life. But the book is available through I'm glad you asked. It went on sale on Barnes & Noble and Amazon yesterday. I haven't made a post on it on social media yet, but it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, through authorhouse.com, and worldwide, many distributors.
So definitely be sure to purchase that book and help my guy out. And my next question is, before we transition, is you talk about how you want to inspire people through your writing. And so I guess you got to figure this question's coming. Do you have any ideas for the next book, or are you still gathering information?
Well, fun fact, Plight, the way it's in my head, the way I got it going in my head, it might be a little 3 or 4 part little story. Because I've grown with that character, with the story. I feel like he still has some growing to do, but there's tons of more stories on the way. I got one I'm brainstorming right now called A Land Without Law. It's gonna be like a Western theme. Then one that's gonna be a challenge to write is gonna be Knuckle Game, a story of a girl who hit back. That's gonna be for like more of the females, trying to get some more female empowerment going on.
Very nice. As we talk about transition from inspiration to, in about 55 more days, a group of young men are going to see their dreams come true as we enter into the NBA draft in October. But this past Thursday, we just got done with the NBA draft lottery, where the Minnesota Timberwolves find themselves atop and have the number 1 overall pick. And Klucas has plenty to say about this. So Klucas, what were your first initial thoughts when you saw Minnesota come away with the number 1 overall pick?
They can't screw this up.
Right.
I think Minnesota right now, regardless of what they do, whether they keep the pick, whether they trade down for assets, plus, somebody else's, pick later in the top 10, whatever they do. And I mean this like in a way of like they can't afford to screw it up, and like they're in a position where no matter what they do, they screw up. So like if you manage to mess this up, you're just that bad of a franchise at this point.
So what do you think they need to do to not mess up?
What I think they need to do is trade down, get assets and trade down, and takes, because I think the guy that fits the perfect position for them right now is Obi Toppin, in my opinion. And obviously, as much as me and you like Obi Toppin, I don't think he's worth the number 1 overall pick. I think we can all agree on that. I think you could trade down with a team that's looking to get an Anthony Edwards, a James Wiseman, or a LaMelo Ball. You can trade down, take assets from them, not necessarily, star players or anything when I talk about assets, but we're talking about like role players that fits what you need. Alongside, you get Obi Toppin, who I think is the perfect power forward to play next to Karl Anthony Towns. But if they were to keep the number 1 overall pick, if we're just going, just based off what we know, they keep it, they got to go Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards, he shows the defensive potential. We all know he's a bucket. And I think if you roll into a future with D'Lo, Anthony Edwards, and Karl Anthony Towns, I think you set yourself up for a bright future. But yeah, in my opinion, I think they need to trade down. Teams that could look to trade up, obviously, in my mock draft, if anybody saw it on Facebook, I had Atlanta trading up for the number 1 overall pick. I think Atlanta is very intrigued on getting their Georgia boy, Anthony Edwards. Obviously, the Knicks got screwed a little bit once again. Every year we seem to joke about it, but then it becomes the truth. You could possibly see the Knicks looking to move up. Obviously, they've had their eyes on LaMelo Ball since the beginning. So that could be a move you see come up. And another move I can see come up, even though they're in the top 5 already, is the Chicago Bulls. I think the Bulls really want to secure their spot in getting a LaMelo Ball potentially. So, but as far as the Timberwolves go, back to your question, I don't think they can mess this up possibly, unless you manage to somehow take the wrong guy out of all this. I don't think you can mess it up.
Interesting. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves have become notorious for messing the draft up. I mean, even going back to when they took Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio with back-to-back point guards over Steph Curry at that, which I believe we talked about on a previous show. But no, Sean, what do you think the Timberwolves should do?
I like Lucas's point. You know, instead of – I didn't even think about that. Instead of, risking – years, because they have the potential to be at least a playoff team, right? Can we all agree on that? I think what they're missing is, solid veteran leadership. They're deep. I think they got a solid team. They just need the right role players and veterans to get them over that little hump to be a solid playoff contender for at least a few years, instead of drafting a rookie, getting him in line and building him up. So I like Lucas's point. I'm leaning with him on that.
I respect it. And if we want to transition to the rich getting richer. Can you imagine? Go back the last decade. You build a pretty nice team through the draft. You win an NBA championship in 2015. You win 73 games in 2016, but blow a 3-1 lead in the finals. Then you sign one of the best players in the NBA, in Kevin Durant. Go on to win 2 straight championships after that. And then the following year, you make it back to the finals. KD gets hurt. Klay Thompson gets hurt. Now they lose to the Toronto Raptors, who, congratulations to them again, even though it's about a year later, winning their first NBA championship. But then you go
Which, by the way, because I'd still like to throw it in people's face, I called the Toronto Raptors coming out of the East last year from the get-go.
Yes, we know. We are aware.
Kawhi and luck, though. Can we just peep how Kawhi wins? Especially in this little playoff series. Porzingis gets thrown out. Luka Doncic gets hurt. That's a dub. It's Kawhi just ends up winning off these miraculous small
That's
things.
what I said all those years of Golden State when they managed to play a team in the playoffs that had a significant player injured.
Yeah.
But now you fast forward to this year. Klay Thompson is hurt, can't play. Kevin Durant's gone. Steph Curry gets hurt a month within the season. Now they find themselves with the worst record in the NBA. But now they have the number 2 overall pick. And now you have the potential of, having Steph, Klay, and Draymond all back next year with the addition of the number 2 overall pick, which should be who?
If they keep the pick, it's James Wiseman.
Yeah.
Unless some team trades up to that number 1 spot that we were talking about and they want James Wiseman, then it's going to be James Wiseman. And that's if Golden State decides they can't trade that number 2 pick for something big as well.
They definitely need a big, the 4 or 5. I think they're good on guards in general. You know what I mean? They're solid. And just the fact that you got for the number 2 pick is going to be a great experience for them, because you're joining the team with a 2-time MVP in Steph Curry, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Draymond, Klay, and you got Steve Kerr, who's been just a solid coach and player when he was on the Bulls. He's got experience. That's just a lot of information for a young basketball prospect or player, and it's going to be great to see, honestly, from that. Just watch whoever that is grow in that position.
I think we're all in agreement that they should take Wiseman. 1 through 4, the Warriors are pretty set, but if that one weak spot in the starting lineup is at the 5 position, and especially one that can run the floor, protect the rim, and is a good athlete like Wiseman is. He has that perfect fit with how Golden State runs their offense. So I think it's a match made in heaven. And a starting lineup next year with Steph, Clay, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond, and James Wiseman. Geez, that's scary. The rich are just getting richer, and Golden State is not going to be down for long. But moving on, what are some of the what are some of the other surprises of the draft lottery, Klucas, if any at all?
Kind of like Mark Tatum, or not Mark Tatum, sorry. Kind of like how they said during the draft lottery. Nobody real outside of the Hornets shooting up into the top 3. Pretty much the draft lottery went as expected. Everybody that's drafting where they're at is pretty much where they were projected for the most part. Outside of, like, we talk about the Pistons and Knicks, the Hornets shot up, but there was no really the Hornets shot up from 8 to 3. It's a shoot up, but it's not really that big of one. It's not like the Pelicans last year where they shot from pick 13 to number 1. So no real big shockers. Definitely could see a lot of draft night trades, whether it be for draft picks or teams looking to, make moves, whether it be free up cap space, help their team out, trade veterans, whatever it may be. I didn't really see any shockers from draft night outside of the Knicks got snubbed again.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really into conspiracy theories, and maybe a little bit, but when I think of but if there's one consistent story that I can get behind, is that the NBA draft lottery is rigged. I'm convinced.
Oh, 100%.
I mean,
did y'all watch it? Did y'all see how they just displayed it? They just opened up cards. I mean, there's no way for sure to say it was like a lottery, I feel like that was scheduled picking of, okay, this team gets this pick.
But what would have had me saying off the jump, you can make the argument this year that it wasn't as rigged as they've made it look before.
And that's where I was going.
What would have made it rigged this year, to me, is if they would have moved the Pelicans up from that 13 spot to a top 3 pick.
Why do you say that?
You had, because you had the play-in game for the sole reason of you wanted Zion to make the playoff. So what do you do to counteract that since they didn't make it? Give them a number 2 overall pick. Give them a top 3 pick again.
So if the Pelicans were to have gotten a top 3 pick, who do you think they would have
100%. Honestly, I could have seen them going Anthony Edwards.
How do you think Anthony Edwards and Zion would play together?
And honestly, from a money standpoint, especially with the trade rumors of Lonzo, LaMelo, think of the marketing standpoint of LaMelo and Zion. I mean,
what if they could keep Lonzo through all that?
Oh, that'd be even bigger marketing. You got the Ball brothers and Zion.
Exactly.
It'll be fun to watch.
Then you bring LeVar into it. I think the Pelicans would almost be forced to sign LiAngelo, even if he doesn't play.
Just have him as a 15th man or something, or as one of those 3 reserves you can keep on your bench.
Yep, and LeVar comes in as an assistant coach at that point.
Oh, God, that would just – I don't know about all that. I think that would just – that'd be horrible.
But yeah.
Marketing would be great, but it'd be horrible.
Didn't seem as rigged to me this year. They didn't make it look as noticeable, at least. So I had no issues.
I would have been convinced it was rigged even if the Warriors got the number 1 overall pick. Just because –
Well, I thought they were going to. That was going to happen. I thought the Warriors were going to, for real, get that number 1 pick just to rebuild that – even rebuild it, but give that franchise more clout, more publicity again.
Exactly, and just have them going from, success to down year back to success almost right away. I mean, which they were going to have success regardless, with everyone coming back next year, but just to add a number 1 overall pick on top of that just adds to that success and that growth within that organization. But, I think we covered the order enough right now for the moment, but what do you make of the talent in this draft?
I'm sleeping on it, honestly, besides LaMelo, basically the top 3. I'm sleeping on it. I feel like this draft is going to be a draft where you do see a lot of trades for teams to establish and get themselves going for next season, but I'm sleeping on it. Like me and you were talking before we started, I see this is like 2013. You got to like really put time into developing that talent. There's no clear standout like Doncic, Trae Young. There's no names like that.
Got anything to add, Klucas?
Yeah, because while he's sleeping on this draft, I feel like this draft is slept on. This draft has actually got a lot of good players.
Okay.
If you actually sit down and watch tape on a lot of players, on a lot of these guys. Now, granted, a lot of it is based off potential. But at the same time, this draft is fairly talented. I mean, you start, like we talked about the top three, we already know those are what we could say, nothing is ever for sure, but you could say those are the for sure guys that you could say probably are going to be all-stars at the next level. But when you go past them, you look at guys like Onyeka Okongwu, very talented big man. Draws Bam Adebayo comparisons to me. And keep in mind, we all know Bam wasn't highly, scouted coming out of college. He went, 14th overall to Miami that year. So it's not like he was like a highly, like an Anthony Davis-like player, like we expected him to be what he is. Other guys, guys we talked about in my mock draft, I'm big on Killian Hayes out of France.
I know nothing about pro players in this draft. Go ahead.
Killian Hayes, Denny Abdiha, these foreign guys that I'm really big on as well. Tyrese Halliburton is a Lonzo Ball mold, but a lot better of a shooter. Guys like this, Isaac Okoro, arguably the best defender in the draft, best perimeter defender in the draft. I know Les is going to argue and say Trey Jones, but, Isaac Okoro, Devin Vassell. Now, granted, these guys may not be all-stars, but these are going to be borderline third option players that are very important to your team. Probably outside of the top 10. After you get outside the top 10, that's where you'll start digging into your role players that are just going to pretty much, like we talked about, fill your roles that you need. Your 3-and-D guys, your 6-man roles, all that. But this draft is a lot more talented than people are giving credit for.
I just have to question, how biased do you think I am? Yes, I think Trey Jones was one of the best point guard defenders in college basketball, and I think he's going to have a long NBA career because of his defensive prowess. But as someone who actually has covered basketball, someone who is a realist, Isaac Okoro has more defensive upside at the NBA level, given his length, his size, and his length than Trey Jones. I am not naive to that. I don't appreciate the disrespect here, Klucas.
I had to throw the shade in there a little bit.
I understand. But one person that's really I think is slipping that a lot of people are kind of disrespecting right now is Cole Anthony. I mean,
I agree.
I don't know. I mean, he was, top 5 pick coming into this college basketball season. Yeah, he missed some time, but I mean, when he played, that was about the only time North Carolina had a chance to win.
He missed some time, and he was in a really bad situation for North Carolina this year. Between injuries, not having a great season team-wise and everything. I mean, like you said, I had a little bit more hope for North Carolina this year than you or Spencer, and Spencer being a North Carolina fan. But
well, Spencer had more hope than me. I told you all this is going to happen. You called the Raptors coming out of the East. I called North Carolina being absolute dog duty this year.
Yeah, and like you said, was it Cole Anthony who was scoring for North Carolina? Cole Anthony was that guy, and for him to go from when he came out of high school, it was he's right up there with LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, and James Wiseman. To the injuries hit. Okay, he's top 5 still. We get back to he's top 10. Now I'm looking at Bleacher Report's mock draft after the lottery went down, and he's projected 20 to Miami, which I'm sure you would love as a Miami fan if he.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to slide to Miami, I'm good.
If he falls down that far, but I think it's a little bit disrespectful to have Cole Anthony slide to 20. Yeah, I'm big on Cole Anthony. He's another one of those guys I believe that could be a borderline potential all-star.
I don't think – I mean, when I watch Anthony, he plays a very similar style to Damian Lillard, who I'm very big on. So it's easy to fall
Not
in
as
love.
good as a shooter, but
Well, duh. I mean, Dame's Dame. Dame is different, you know. That's all I got to say. But
it's now Dame range. It's not Steph range.
But
that's only
Cole got a dog in him for sure. Like, that's undeniable. He do got that dog. It's just what he does with it that, you know, that's why I'm sleeping on it. I got to see it develop.
I'm just glad that he's not projected to go to New York right now.
I don't think nobody wants to go to New York. Knicks. Nets, maybe, for Brooklyn. But the Knicks, James Dolan got to go. I think that's New York's problem, honestly.
So I'm looking at NBC Sports mock draft right now, and they have Cole Anthony going number 10 to the Phoenix Suns, which kind of break down how would Cole and Devin Booker play well together? I mean, or would they play well together?
All right, look, you know, as big as I am on an individual player, there is a team factor. Like, how do you fit in as a team? I don't know if Cole Anthony necessarily fits into what Phoenix is doing, especially when you look at what they did in the bubble.
Especially right now, yeah.
I think a point guard like Tyrese Halliburton or Killian Hayes fits better in Phoenix than a Cole Anthony.
So
now, whether they be a better NBA player than Cole Anthony or not remains to be seen. But as far as a fit-wise, Killian Hayes or Tyrese Halliburton would be a better fit in Phoenix.
So you're saying more of that pass-first point guard rather than that shoot-first point guard?
Yes. Because when you're looking at what Phoenix did in the bubble, we all know Devin Booker, the bucket. He's the go-to. We know that. DeAndre Ayton right now is their second option. He finally, after, finally getting healthy throughout and, in the bubble, started to look like he could be that second star in Phoenix next to Booker as far as that second option. Going into the draft, I would have told you power forward before point guard, but Cam Johnson in the bubble managed to fill in that stretch forward position that Phoenix has needed. And I think going on, that's what I would go for. And then Mikal Bridges, we know, is a lockup on defense and can be a great three-point shooter on the offensive side. So he's that 3-and-D player they need next to a Devin Booker. So that point guard spot, you got to have a playmaker and a defender. You got to keep the two defenders on the perimeter next to Booker. We all know Booker's a average, just below average defender. You keep those two perimeter defenders next to Booker, and then you keep that pass first player next to Booker, where Booker doesn't have to play make everything, and it's going to make Phoenix roll.
Right. And if Cole did go to Phoenix, I can see him being basically another TJ Warren. You know what I mean? Like him getting shipped somewhere because obviously, like you just said, Devin Booker's that go-to. You can't have two guards that both need the ball. I mean, it's not going to work out like CJ Dame. You know what I'm saying?
And that's been my biggest thing on Portland. I've been saying for the years, like, yes, Portland has had their success, but when you got two guards that do the same exact thing, I'm not sure how well that works. Granted, they went to the Western Conference Finals last year, but it's not going to work when you're talking about making the NBA Finals. I mean, sure. Dame and CJ are the same exact player. They're, certified buckets. Okay, calm down, Les. You know what I meant. Don't take what I'm saying seriously.
There's more to what I'm about to say. I mean, a lot of that, yes. I mean, as far as like they are similar styles that they're score first guards about, close to about the same height and all this. But a lot of how this combination between Dame and CJ's been so successful, a lot of that comes down to Dame's IQ and, how much he looks back into the game. I say this because I was listening to JJ Redick's podcast earlier in the week, and he had Damian Lillard on it. And I knew Dame was a workaholic. That famous quote that came out last year that said, in order to be successful in front of millions, you got to outwork millions in front of nobody. which really stuck with me. Very true quote. But, he talks about, on his off days, he watches every single NBA game, which I don't even know how there's enough time in a day for that. And to get your workout in. It's an insane dedication to be able to watch and break down everybody. And a lot of that is Dame's IQ and like his adaptability and his studying of film. Like he knows a lot of that. He knows where to go, to either get CJ, knows when to give CJ the ball, when to take over himself. So unless you have someone with that kind of work ethic, having two guards in your backcourt that play very similarly usually doesn't work.
Yeah. And so, and that's what I think you're walking into if you draft a Cole Anthony as another kind of Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum type thing. And I'm not sure how that works as far as when you're trying to reach the ultimate goal of the NBA Finals.
Well, my next question is, who are some of the guys that are expected to go outside of the lottery that you're really big on?
Outside of the lottery?
Outside of the lottery. We know who the lottery picks are, but I want some steals.
Oh, who could be some steals? Nico Mannion. I know that's your guy, Les.
Oh, I love Nico. Hey,
Nico
Nico, I'm still waiting on $20 from Christian.
Nico could definitely end up being a steal. His teammate at Arizona, Josh Green, could end up being a steal. A guy that we talked about in my last mock draft, I kind of see in different mock drafts, they have him going outside the lottery, they have him going in the lottery. So it's kind of back and forth, inconsistent. So if you want to consider this a steal or not, Kyra Lewis Jr. He's growing on me as a point guard. In terms of what he can do, he's very versatile. He could play in very different ways. He could score if you need him to score. He could be a passer if you need him to be a passer. Can be a defender if you need him to be a defender. He plays a variety of games. And honestly, I like that out of my point guard because there may be some nights where I don't need him just to be a strict passer. I need him to score if he's got a matchup. If he doesn't have a matchup, I need him to run my offense and find the people that have that matchup, that favorable matchup. There are some nights that, you're playing Golden State and Portland, and your only job tonight is to keep up with Steph and Dame. And so I like that. And I think he could end up being a steal if he falls out of the lottery. Like I said, he's in the lottery, out of the lottery in different mock drafts, depending on which one you look at. Another guy that kind of falls in and out of the lottery in different drafts I look at is Patrick Williams. I understand that he's very raw, but I think the one thing that stands out in terms of what he would be good at right away when he steps on an NBA court is his defense. So I think in terms of teams, and not necessarily teams like that's looking to improve, but like if you're an established team outside of the lottery and you just need those one or two pieces, Patrick Williams fits one of those one or two pieces if you need somebody that could just be a lockup. Guys like that. Outside of that, I really like Daniel Turu from Minnesota. Another versatile center. Could shoot, could play inside, plays defense. Outside of that, a lot of my guys I really like in the draft are in that lottery already.
Fair enough. One guy that I really like, I think has all the talent in the world. The problem is his motor, and that's Jaden McDaniels. I think from a talent perspective, Jaden McDaniels from Washington is one of the not just top 10. I think he's top 5 talent-wise. The problem is his motor. A lot of that got exposed in his one season at Washington. But, he's a 6'10" guy who can play both the 3 and the 4 position. Still doesn't have a great jump shot.
At 6'10", with this game being positionless, he could even play some 5 if you need him to.
He could. He's still. As a perimeter game, he's still got a lot to work on. That his jump shot wise, but he can talk about driving to the rim. Superb athlete. Can make the great pass when he wants to. But from a talent perspective, and I was talking earlier about looking at NBC Sports' mock draft, they have the Miami Heat picking him, which I thought is a little interesting because I think if they need anything right now, it's a point guard. But from a talent perspective, but the more I think about it, it does make kind of sense. I mean, you could have, put Jaden McDaniels at the 4 right behind, put Bam at the 5. And they made an interesting point that if Eric Spoelstra can get the most out of guys like Hassan Whiteside and James Johnson, then he may be able to have success with someone like Jaden McDaniels.
And see, and I don't know if you remember where I had Jaden McDaniels going in my mock draft. Where I had him going is another team where if any team can take that player that slips, that has uber talent, and get the most out of them, the Denver Nuggets have proven that as well. I had the Nuggets taking Jaden McDaniels in the later round. And if you want to talk about a guy that can play the 4 next to Jokic and be a very good 4 position next to Jokic, I think Jaden McDaniels could do that when you have a combination of him and whether they bring back Paul Millsap next year or not, him and Jeremy Grant for sure going in for years, along with Bol. I mean, Denver would just continue to add to an already scary somewhat roster, even though they can't manage to beat Utah.
They just have a team full of unicorns if they get Jaden McDaniels. That's what it sounds like. I mean, you got guys like Jokic that can pretty much is like your point center. I mean, if they get Jaden McDaniels, another 6'10" athletic wing that's incredibly skilled, Bol would be coming off your bench.
Bol could play 2 through 5 for you.
Right.
And then you got Michael Porter Jr., who's 6'10" as well, who's best suited at the 2 or the 3 positions, but if you needed him to, could run the 4. I mean, it's just a team full of unicorns. It's really scary. And why they're – I mean, well, Conley last night went 7 of 8 from beyond the three-point line. That's stuff like – performance like that is tough to beat. But why they let Utah get 2 games on them is beyond me.
All I'm saying is after game 1, all we heard was Donovan Mitchell doesn't have help.
Yeah, and that's the biggest crock of BS I've heard. But don't get me wrong. I mean, is Utah's roster loaded?
No.
With Conley and Boggy hurt? No. But when I think of somebody who's by themselves, as people were saying, and as I got into many debates over the past week, I think of someone like Brad Beal, or someone like trying to think of who else I said, but Bradley Beal's the big one. That he's really by himself in Washington right now. Until Rui Hachimura develops, he is like by himself.
And John Wall returns next year.
Is John Wall going to be the John Wall of old, or is he going to lose a step?
I think he'll be the John Wall of old.
Are you saying that because you have a Kentucky hoodie on right now?
Les, I am disrespected that you think I'm biased.
I had to do it. You did it to me. I had to do it to you. Is there any,
I mean, I don't think John Wall's going to come back and maybe be an all-star, but to come back and be an 18-point, 10-assist guy for Brad Beal, that's exactly what he needs, along with the development of Rui Hachimura, plus whoever they draft at this top 10 pick.
Right. Somebody to give him additional scoring and playmaking for sure. Yeah.
So neither one of you are sold at Thomas Bryant running the starting 5?
No.
I like him a lot more than most people, but I don't know if I don't like him when I'm thinking big picture NBA Finals as my starting 5.
Just imagine, say the Lakers do make it to the NBA Finals, or say if I don't know, I'm just picturing like or maybe not the Lakers, say like the Nuggets or something, somebody with a top tier center, and Thomas Bryant having to check Jokic. I mean, geez, he's gonna get worked all day long.
It's mismatch. Just get the ball to Jokic. That's it.
Exactly. Just run them. That's what they do anyway. Just run the ball through them. But is there anything y'all want to add before we move on?
Are you talking about in terms of the draft lottery?
Yeah, the NBA draft, prospects, lottery, anything like that.
No, just like I said, I'm really interested in seeing how these players coming out develop. I'm not I'm sleeping on them, but I just don't want to set my expectations high, and they turn out not to be what I think they are. So I'm gonna just ride it the wave, as in I'm gonna enjoy their growth, watching them work.
And it sounds like, one thing I'm going to add is what it sounds like you're saying is like there's not that transcending talent. Like there's not this can't miss prospect. So I can respect that. And kind of like the comparisons you made with the 2013 draft. 2013 had better players later on, but their the talent that was expected to be towards the top of the draft, Depot turned out to be a good player, but most of them really didn't pan out.
And like you were talking about as players' motors, if basketball's the thing you love, why should we have to motivate you to go out there and be the best that you could possibly be? I feel like, and that's just one thing that's kind of like making me sleep on this draft is like, I don't really see too many that just want to be out like, okay, when I come into the league, I'm going to kill. I don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my last thing I'd like to add, even though I know they're never going to see this, I need the Cleveland Cavaliers organization to look me in my eyes when I say this from a fan perspective. I swear to God, if you take another point guard in this year's draft, I will officially lose my fanhood. I swear to God, if you take another point guard, unless it's like a LaMelo Ball, obviously, if LaMelo were to fall, that's a completely different story. But if you take another point guard in this draft, we're going to have some issues.
I think kind of tying in Sean's point with your point, Sean wants to see these more players have that dog in them. I want to see you have this dog with that take. Just saying losing your fanhood, I don't think they're going to care. They're going to be like, you know what, we got plenty of fans. We can replace other fans. I want you to say, look, Cleveland Cavaliers, look me in my eye. If you draft another point guard, I'm coming for you. Just go balls to the wall. Go big or go home, Klucas.
I think
if they draft another point guard, the next time a GM spot opens up, I'm applying for that.
Right.
I hope you get it.
Off that 2016 high. I feel like they're still riding that 2016 high. Like, it's time to move on.
LeBron is gone. That's all I got to say. He's been gone for a while now.
I was perfectly happy with taking Colin Sexton in 2018. Last year, I'm just sitting at work, and and I just started at FedEx, so I couldn't take my phone in or nothing. And all of a sudden, one of my managers just comes up to me. Cleveland took Darius Garland. What? What?
Why?
I'm like,
what's wrong with Darius Garland?
Nothing's wrong with Darius Garland, but why did we need another point guard?
Maybe they thought it was going to be Portland 2.0. I don't know.
No, it's not.
No, it's
all I'm saying is if it's not LaMelo, you better not take another point guard. All I'm saying.
But that's because Melo, you can run at the 2 or the 3 as well if you really wanted to.
Yes, and the only reason why I would say Melo is because then I would feel better about either trading Darius Garland or bringing him off my bench.
I think a 6-man role would actually be what's best for Darius Garland at this point in his career.
I think, honestly, what's best for the Cavs is Colin Sexton coming off the bench and being a Lou Will off the bench.
See, I think I see Garland having more of that Lou Will type role, but that's just me. You are the Cavaliers fan here. My fanhood's not in jeopardy if they draft another point guard.
Hey, all I'm saying is that rumor went around that the Cavs apparently had some kind of trade for Ben Simmons. I'm all for it at this point.
Fair enough.
You can manage to pull it off. I don't care no more. Pull it off. Pull the trigger.
You get a transcending point guard like Ben Simmons, running the pick and roll with someone like Drummond. It's a little nice 2-man game. They just gotta have floor spacing.
We just need hella shooters. We just need hella shooters after that.
Right. But moving on to, as we always like to cover, the main portion of our podcast is talking about recruiting. And I'm so happy right now. And Klucas, I know, is so freaking salty because the number 3 player in the class of the just blanked for a second. The class of number 3 player in the class of 2021, Paulo Banchero, power forward out of Odeya High School, committed to the Brotherhood, Duke University. What's even better about this, Klucas? Where was he projected to go?
Kentucky.
Yes.
Oh,
How do you feel, Klucas? What are your feelings?
plus, anytime you get a steal, it's the Duke and Kentucky. I'll see where y'all going.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel, Klucas? You're being awful quiet over there.
I feel betrayed. That's how I feel.
Why betrayed?
Because he was supposed to be a Wildcat.
You know who was also supposed to be a Wildcat before a Blue Devil?
Don't you dare say it.
Zion.
Yeah.
Now, I know Clemson was number 1 in the crystal ball. But
Okay.
Kentucky's prediction was a lot higher than Duke's.
Oh, yeah. I trust me, I know.
You know what makes it even worse is that Paulo Boncharo's player comparison is a player that you know very well, according to 24/7, and that's P.J. Washington.
Yep.
So being a Kentucky fan, you get a P.J. Washington-style player suiting up for the Blue Devils. What does he bring to the table?
Energy, high motor, stretch four.
And is that valuable?
It's very valuable.
I'm loving this every second.
We were two bad calls away that year with PJ and Tyler Hero from going to the Final Four.
Oh, now you're blaming the refs now.
Of course, I'm always going to blame the refs.
That's the
Am I
Kentucky
right?
fan.
Am I right? Am I right? No, I'm not. From the basketball standpoint, I'm not right, but I'm a Kentucky fan, so yeah, it's always a ref's fault.
At least you own it, though. Most Kentucky fans don't even own that part of it. But no, I was very excited when Paulo Boncharo committed to the Blue Devils this week. You know, like you said, brings a lot of
and
energy.
It was out of the blue. It was out of the blue. He didn't set a commitment date or nothing. He just came just straight out and just said, I'm going to Duke.
I love it. I really like his game. I mean, kind of like you said, he brings a high energy. He's a very, stout. He's got a nice college-ready body right now. Very physical player, can also stretch the floor. A lot to like about his game, but, pairing him with Duke's other 2021 commitment, A.J. Griffin, it's kind of like it's a trend right now with this particular recruiting class. I don't know if you've watched A.J. Griffin a lot, but he's also, a very physical, stout wing that's very athletic. So one thing that this class really brings is energy and physicality and athleticism, and I like it. And I made this point on the social media pages earlier, but it was ironic to me because, following all the recruiting talk and all that, Duke was expected to take a major hit when Jeff Capel left for Pittsburgh. Not so fast, because John Shire stepped in and more than many expected has picked up the slack. He's the one who is credited with Paulo Boncharo committing to Duke. But let me read off these names that he's credited with. Cam Reddish, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, and Vernon Carey. I don't know a lot about basketball. Those are some pretty good names, I feel like.
They're all bums.
Yeah, Tatum's, just ask the Celtics. He's such a bum right now.
Tatum's actually one of my favorite players in the league right now.
He's averaging, 30 points in the playoffs right now? Well, maybe not after last night, but.
He's a dog.
The one thing, if we're talking about recruiting, and you're talking specifically about Kentucky recruiting. The one thing that kills me about it, well, I hope that Kentucky can manage the same, trend of recruiting as Duke did when, you lost Capel, Shire picked right up. We just lost Kenny Payne. I'm hoping, we don't lose a step in the recruiting. What I'm noticing the last couple of years in terms of Kentucky recruiting is we managed to get a lot of guards early, a lot of good guards early. I'm not taking that away. But it seems like we always forget about that big guy. And it always late into recruiting season where we're like, oh, we need a big man and we got to go find one that's still available. And I'm just like, when you go back and look at when Kentucky's been their most successful, it's been when they've had that legitimate big man. Going back, to Cal's first recruiting class, DeMarcus Cousins, even in big man, not necessarily just talking about a center, but then you go back to Terrence Jones. then Anthony Davis, and Nerlens before he hurt himself.
Right.
Cat, Willie Cauley-Stein, Julius Randle. We've been at our best when we've had those legitimate big guys, and somehow that just went away. And we talked about it before when we talked about Kenny Payne. Yes, Kenny Payne was very good at developing the big guys, which is why we saw guys like Nick Richards takes leaps and bounds, and guys like Willie Cauley-Stein take leaps and bounds. But we need to start looking at that big guy early and not stop waiting. I get it. Guards are important, especially in today's game. Guards are probably the most important position on the court in today's game. But you still got to have that big guy at the end of the day.
In college basketball, I agree with you on that for sure. You definitely need that 5 or 4.
Yeah. You got to have that big guy that's either a defensive monster down low or is an offensive problem. And I just don't like that Kentucky does so much in the guards early and then kind of just forgets about the big guy till late in recruiting.
One thing I really like about Duke's recruiting classes the last several years is even adding more one and dones in recent years is that every team, and this is going to sound so cliche because obviously when you pick a bunch of one and dones, you have so many different individuals coming through the program year in and year out, but every team is different. And I don't mean from a player perspective or a names perspective. I'm talking about a style different. Certain coaches, like your Tony Bennett's or your Rick Pitino's when he was at Louisville, or even Calipari to a certain extent, they usually run a same or similar scheme year in and year out. These Duke teams are different every year as far as how they play. Going back to the Zion, Cam, and RJ class, it was a bunch, the theme was NBA-style wings. The year before that, they ran through the bigs with Bagley and Carter and then stretched it out to the perimeter with Gary, Trent, and Grayson. Well, even though obviously Grayson wasn't a recruit, but, you get what I'm saying. This is the way they played. This past year, it was more of an old-school Duke team, with the big center when Vernon Carey in the middle, but centered around, a bunch of defensive guards and with some good to decent shooting around that as well. And, talking about the trend with this recruiting class so far, it seems that we're getting those physical energy athletes like Bonchero and AJ Griffin. And it's going to be interesting to see who else wants to join to see how well the other guys can play off of the 2 guys that are committed right now. But another question I have for you, Klucas, is that when Bonchero committed to Duke, I heard a lot of, noise on social media saying that Cal's done. Cal's losing his touch. What do you make of that? Or is it the same thing that we hear year in and year out with Duke or somebody else that he loses it?
Yeah. It's the same thing year in and year out. I mean, every year, every time, Duke lands a Zion or, like when Mamoni Bates committed to Michigan State, it's every time it's the same thing. It's Cal's lost his touch. Cal can't get these guys anymore, yada, yada, yada. But still, at the end of the year, Kentucky still ends up with a top 3 recruiting class. At the end of the day, a lot of these guys know, Duke is obviously right there with Kentucky. Don't get me wrong. Kentucky's the gateway to the NBA. Everybody knows that. Duke's the gateway to the NBA. You want if you told yourself pretty much that, hey, I could be one and done, or I can go here, develop 1 or 2 years and go straight to the league. I think Kentucky has proven that you can do that, regardless if you do 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. Like I've talked about, look at the development of Willie Cauley-Stein and Nick Richards. Those are perfect guys that you could say, hey, even if I stay 3 years, I'm going to develop at some point in 3 years and become an NBA prospect. You look at your Anthony Davises and your John Walls and you say, I mean, even if I go 1 year, that 1 year of development is key. So, and it's like Cal says all the time, Kentucky's not for everybody. But I've got 2 questions for you, Les.
Okay.
So, one, you said every year the play style is different. If there is a college basketball season this year, how does Duke play this year?
That is a good question. I think it's going to be kind of a mix. I compare it a lot to the 2001 Blue Devil team. I think you got your, good defensive.
That's high praise.
Well, I don't mean as far as play style rather than success. Obviously, the 2001 team I'm not going to compare any Duke team to that team as far as like production wise. You know, that in my opinion, I think that is Duke's best team. You had 2 player of the years on that roster. I'm talking about as far as like team makeup, as far as having a stud guard, you know, playing through guys like athletic, you know, long shooting wings, like Dunleavy, you know, we got guys like Battier and then a guy in the middle. Actually, no. I'm going to take it a step further. I think it's actually going to be more closer to – I'm going to take that back. No, I'm going to say it's going to be more like an early 90s Duke team as far as, you know, just makeup. You know, you got your athletic wings. You know, you have your stretch 4, big guy down, you know, rim protector down low and a steady point guard. So, yeah, it's more like an early 90s Duke team.
All right, and my second question is, because Duke changes the way they play every year, do you think that hurts Duke in the long run?
Not in the long run. I think it makes it even harder. You know, it's kind of like a point me and Spencer made a while back. It's so hard to bring in these 18 and 19-year-old guys, you know, regardless of how talented they are, get people to buy into a system and put it all together less than in about 9 months to win a championship. It's hard enough to do that. I think it just is another factor to why it's so difficult to win a championship with these one and done players. So I don't think it really hurts in the long run. Because if there's any coach that is adaptable as far as play style and scheme, it's Coach K. But I don't think long run it's an issue.
Well, I agree with you that Kentucky pretty much plays the same every year for the most part.
That's what I'm saying. It's similar. It's not the same, but it's similar.
Obviously, you adapt to who your best player is once you figure that out. I mean, every coach does. Every good coach should adapt to their best player. But for the most part, Kentucky's run and gun, and Cal preaches defense. Defense. It's run and gun and defense. You know, you get that steal, get that block, we're running in transition every time.
Defense to offense, and, you know, I do like that style.
Yep, and, you know, Kentucky obviously has changed their scheme over the years. You know, like the Tyler Hero, P.J. Washington year, they shot a lot more threes than usual. But obviously when you have shooters like P.J. and Tyler Hero on your team, yeah, you tend to – you're going to want to shoot a little bit more. But, yeah. But that's adapting to your 2 best players. PJ and Tyler Hero were Kentucky's 2 best players that year. So you adapt to what they do best. But yeah, that's pretty much Kentucky's game plan every year is defense to offense.
Just some years it's more focused on the perimeter defense. Some years it's more of a focal point in the interior defense. But yeah, I think
in the early years of Cal, it was interior.
And the more I think about it, the more I do want to clarify that I do think this Duke team coming in this year, if we have a season, is more of like a typical of an early 90s Duke team, like I said, with, you know, the heady defensive point guard up front, you know, your athletic wings, your stretch 4, and then a guy in the middle. So that's what this team reminds me of. And I think another question is another thing is this Duke team could run so many different starting lineups. I'm as big a Duke fan as any. I don't know if there's going to be one go-to lineup. I think this is one of those teams that Krzyzewski can adapt to is going to change the lineup for each team they play on the schedule. You know, some games, you know, you'll have Mark Williams starting at the 5. On other games, you know, you'll have, you know, your starting lineup will be, you know, you'll have Matthew Hurt at the 5, you know, with Jalen Johnson, maybe Jamin Brakefield if he wants to give him some minutes. But I think the 3 consistent starters this year are going to be Jeremy Roach, Wendell Moore, and Jalen Johnson. Those are going to be the 3 guys I think that are consistently in the starting lineup. But I think, you know, guys like DJ Stewart, guys like Joey Baker, guys like Matt Hurt, Mark Williams, I think those are going to be guys that that are going to be in and out of the starting lineup from a nightly basis. But.
And I think for Kentucky, when you're looking at it, I think their only position I think that's really flexible based off what team they play is the point guard position. And I know that you say, well, how can that be? You know, point guard is probably your most important position. How can that be flexible? You know, you got Devin Askew coming in. I don't know why I'm blowing his name off the top of my head. The transfer from Creighton. Not sure why his name is not
Come on,
popping
you're the
up in
Kentucky
my head.
expert. You're supposed to know this.
I know. I don't know why his name. I'm like drawing a blank on his name right now. God, that's gonna eat me until I figure out what it is. But when you're looking at the rest of the Kentucky five, the rest of the remaining four, I think Terrence Clark, B.J. Boston, Keon Brooks, and Olivier Sarr are your four for sure guys that end up being your starters. So I take it you're looking that up for me right now. I take it you're looking that name up.
I can. I wasn't. I was looking at something else. But
no, I gotta do it now because it's gonna.
No, I'll do it. I'll do it. No, you're gonna make me feel bad about it. I'm gonna do it now.
Hey guys, I gotta get up off here.
All right, my man. Shon Diaz, thank you so much for joining us. But we welcome back anytime, and we really enjoyed. Keep up the great work in the writing world, man. Keep inspiring individuals.
Man, I'm trying to. Y'all too, man. Hey, I expect to see y'all on like Barstool, ESPN, or something real soon, man.
Our goal is to be better than them. You know, I don't settle for being on them. I want to be better than them. I think me and Klucas are better than Barstool without question.
Talk that.
You know I talk
Bayless.
at right now.
Talk that talk.
Exactly.
I think we're better than Skip Bayless for sure too.
I think my niece that knows nothing about sports is better than Skip Bayless, but that's beside the point.
Skip Bayless is especially Skip biased to me, just for the way he goes at LeBron, Dame. It's just all bias, man. Can't nobody. If it ain't Jordan, he's not on the. I can't cuss. He's not on the wagon.
If it's not Dallas, San Antonio, Jordan, or Brady, he's not on the wagon all the way.
Or the Cowboys.
That's why I said Dallas or San Antonio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Last time I checked, the Cowboys do play in Dallas. And last time I checked, when we get off the show, there's going to be that one Dallas fan that says this is our year.
Every year.
No, it's gonna happen here in about 2 hours.
They get a new water boy and be like, "Hey, we're winning."
By the way, it's Davion Mintz. I don't know why I could not think of his name.
But
all right.
All right. Appreciate y'all.
Have a good one.
You too, man. Be safe.
But no, no, what I was looking up is I was thinking about all the different starting lineups Duke could have, and just to add to that point. But I think I didn't want to really say it, but our transfer from Columbia, Patrick Tape, I think if he wanted to, could be thrown in there, but I don't see it happening a lot. I think he's got a good motor, but I don't think he's the defensive presence that someone like Mark Williams is, and I don't think he's the offensive presence that if you want to run Matthew Hurt at the 5. Maybe Jordan Goldwire can make some appearances in the starting lineup, but I think he's better as that Energizer Bunny off the bench, to set the press. I mean, I know he started a lot the last couple seasons, but, with as deep as Duke is, I don't see him being as consistently as a starter unless he has really developed an offensive game. So.
And this also all falls if we have a season.
The way it's looking is that we are going to have a college basketball season. That's the way it's looking right now.
I sure hope so.
I mean, I do too. I'm with Coach K. The NCAA tournament needs to happen this year.
It has to.
Even if it's a bubble format.
Last year? Yeah, it has to.
Even if it's like a simple bubble format, I'm all about it. But rounding out the recruiting news is the University of South Carolina football landed a 5-star quarterback for the class of 2022, Gunnar Stockton. And I made a pretty bold prediction. I'm looking at Gunnar's player evaluation and watching a little bit of his tape. And he's drawing a pretty good comparison to another really good quarterback in the Carolinas area. And that's Sam Howell over at UNC. And I made a statement that if Gunnar Stockton is anywhere near that comparison, that this South Carolina-Clemson rivalry may not be so one-sided in the next few years. Klucas, what are your thoughts on that?
Talking about another recruiting another recruiting commit that just kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched a whole lot. I've seen a couple highlights on Stockton. Not really a whole lot. I haven't like actually sat down in depth to like break down his game and this and that. But hopefully South Carolina Clemson doesn't become so one-sided. You know, I like when these rivalry games are actually back and forth and not so predictable. So be interesting to see. But you know, if he compared to somebody that's already that's established himself as a top quarterback in college football and potentially could be a future NFL star, it's high praise.
I mean, he's the number one dual threat quarterback in the class of 2022. It's looking as if he is the number 2 rated quarterback next to my guy Quinn Ewers. So I'm liking this already. But no, I mean, definitely a big commitment from the Gamecocks. Another good commit from Mike. You know, commit resume for Mike Bobo to add to his recruiting resume. How big would it be, or how entertaining would it be to get some new life into that Clemson-South Carolina rivalry?
It'd be very entertaining. Maybe give Dabo something else to talk about. It'd be very entertaining, and not just for the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry. It gets more entertaining in the SEC. You know, you've already got almost great games every weekend in the SEC. At some point, now you add South Carolina back into the mix. And kind of like how we talked before, you know, one commitment could lead to several. So maybe this could be a difference maker for South Carolina in terms of getting other recruits.
I mean, it also is ironic that you say that Gunner is their first commit in the class of 2022. So, I mean, this is just opening the gates for others to come in. I mean, I'm watching Gunner play a lot, and he's definitely a receiver friendly to style of quarterback, or especially if he's anything like Sam Howell. You know, Sam Howell basically opened up 2 1,000-yard receivers in North Carolina this year. So I think that's going to want to cause a lot of – I know you're big on receivers when you're evaluating football teams. I mean, we learned that when we made our NFL predictions. But, I think that's going to want some good receivers to come to Columbia and be a pretty good offense. So
not only good receivers, but good offensive linemen as well.
Mm-hmm. When we had Jackson on the show a couple weeks ago, he's all linemen. They ride for their quarterback. I mean, he's been, and of course, following him on, watching his Instagram and Twitter stories. He's showing to be a rider for Ty Thompson, showing support to him. So I mean, offensive linemen, they're riders for their guys.
Now that I think about it, a question I should have asked Jackson when we had him on is, what style of quarterback does he prefer? I'm sure he probably would have said, either is fine. I just like to block for my quarterback. But what style is more fun to block for? A dual threat or just your straight pocket passer?
I might just tweet that after the show. Be like, hey, Jackson, Klucas forgot to ask you on the podcast. Or you follow him too. You can ask him.
Yeah, that might be a Twitter question. I ask him: dual threat or pocket passer? Which do you like blocking for more? And don't give me the politically correct answer.
I was like, there's nothing politically correct about us. I mean, we're not quite as raunchy as Barstool, but we're not also like proper like ESPN either. We kind of do our own thing, and I love it. But recruiting news, that wraps up the big recruiting news. But of course, I can't wait for this fantasy football draft that we're going to here in a little bit.
Yep. Continue my reign of dominance in the regular season.
Do I make the playoffs? And Spencer, I don't even know where to start with him.
Yep. I got my book right here, ready to go. I'm ready this year. This is the year I take home the title.
Not if I get in the way. But, of course, I got to make the playoffs first.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got to be there first to be in the way.
It was funny. We were talking to Spencer, earlier in the week, and he's saying the way that with everything with going on in COVID, this might be the year that everyone makes the playoffs. And I just go, except me, watch. Be like, everyone makes the playoffs this year. I'm not in it. like I said, everyone's in the playoffs this year.
Yep. So
just, I guess, a little preview for the fans that are watching at home. You know, me, Klucas, and Spencer are about to go live to our fantasy football draft party. We're going to be breaking down every picks, explaining why we pick certain players. And we also want you all to vote for who you think out of us four. It's going to be me, Klucas, Spencer, and our friend Dougie Harden. Which one of us is going to finish best in the season? Which one of us is going to take home the league title? You know, just a little heads up. It is a keeper league, and Klucas is keeping Christian McCaffrey, which I think is a very smart decision.
The #1 fantasy football player.
You know, the way, especially in a PPR league, that's like the #1 fantasy football player of all time. Just kidding, but, you know, maybe not. And for those also watching at home, I have decided to keep King Henry himself, the NFL rushing leader. Hopefully Tannehill can continue to have success throwing just enough to where King Henry can dominate on the ground.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think Doug has said if he's keeping anybody or not, and I don't know if Spencer has or not either. So
Spencer hasn't openly admitted it, but I don't think he's going to tell us.
no, he's not going to tell us until we see it at draft time.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to be like the last possible second, like 1 second before the draft. He's going to be like, "Oh, I did this, by the way."
So
he's going to give that laugh, that laugh, and be like, "I don't give away my secrets."
So we'll see. It will be interesting. Guys like Michael Thomas from your team last year is going to be available. So
I just think there's fewer running backs that are for value than receivers in today's day and age, and that's why I had to jump.
I agree.
And that's why I had to jump on Henry.
So,
but anyways, yes, we will be going live, not on YouTube, but on Facebook Live. So definitely follow us, comment, make your predictions. But I think it was a great show today. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Les Abbott.
Jacob Klucas.
We out.